to see everybody. And I know more folks are going to be joining us a couple minutes after the top of the hour here. But I am excited again for today, very much so, to speak with Dr. David Steiner from Johns Hopkins University Institute for Educational Policy. And in his depth of experience in education in all walks, I think really is invaluable to our conversation. If you didn't see his talk with us back in October of last year, I posted that. There's lots of links in this chat box towards the top here. I think he did a fantastic job getting right to the point of a theme that really has pervaded the rest of our conversations, from talking about indoor air quality to talking about to student interventions on mental health academics, and in the architectural side as well, and commissioning and assessments. It was, we need to do less better. As just something, sort of my colloquial takeaway from some of the themes about going deep into learning and what that requires us to consider. It was a light bulb moment when he spoke with us last time, and I'm just excited to have him come back here. I'm going to step out of the way and let Susan Miller really facilitate with Dr. Steiner our conversation here today. Susan is a partner of ours with CS out of Colorado office. She's a board member. She comes with a financing and schools background and is my partner in planning projects as well. So Susan and Dr. Steiner had the chance to preview this conversation. Unfortunately, I wasn't able, so I'm going to step out and mute, and I have the opportunity to listen, not lead this one. So I am looking forward to being a participant. David, thank you for being here. Thanks for meeting us.
My pleasure, David, and thank you everyone for sharing your time with us. I certainly hope we have time for questions, but I'll leave the emceeing of this in Susan's wonderful hands. So Susan, how would you like to proceed? Would you like me to go through some slides? Would you like to do this more as a question and answer from you, whatever you...
So I was hoping, Dr. Steiner, we could kind of use the same format we did before. You know, you give the overview of the work that you've been doing, what you've seen over the past number of months that's evolved and changed, of course. And then if we can have that dialogue, that would be great. I think there are a lot of people on this conversation this afternoon that will be engaged with it, and I hope that we provide that time for them. So
great. Excellent. Well, I'm going to go very quickly over some slides and slow down on others. So here we go. There we are. And, very quickly, there's been a lot of debate about how much COVID has impacted learning. This is from Curriculum Associates. Obviously, African-American and Hispanic children started behind white and Asian students, particularly children of economic disadvantage as well. Here we can see the impact at third grade, much more sobering in math than in reading. In mathematics, where children are from schools more than 50% Black, we are down to 16% proficiency for those students, white and Black in those schools. That is obviously concerning, particularly when you see the gap to the schools that are over 50% white, where the proficiency rate, while it's down not a dissimilar amount, in other words, COVID has produced learning for everyone, because of the starting point, we now have a 36% proficiency versus a 16% proficiency, right? So more than double the proficiency rates in schools that have children who are majority white, obviously a very large problem. So I think that's sort of the background here. Very quickly, historically, we've retained when students are way behind, we've kept them back a year, or we've just promoted them, the opposite, we've just shunted them forward. But either way, we've engaged in remediation, trying to teach them everything that they didn't know. And that's turned out to be hopeless. I'm going to be very direct with you. I could give you 14 footnotes here, but we don't have the time. You'll be grateful to know. So please take my word for it, or don't, and I will be happy to give the support, scholarly support. But coming from Johns Hopkins, we're not allowed to knowingly say anything we think is complete nonsense, and that's hopefully some reassurance to you. that what I'm saying has some empirical validity. So remediation doesn't work. It's an effort that psychologically depresses children. They know they're being labeled as behind. They know their peers are moving ahead, not standing still while they're trying to fill in big holes. And the result is they never catch up, and actually the achievement gaps get worse. Acceleration, by contrast, focusing on what's most vital. Think of landing a plane, small plane, when the pilot has a heart attack. Air traffic control does not have time to teach you a year and a half worth of information about flying a plane. It tells you the 4, 5, 6 things you must know to get the plane down in one piece. That's acceleration. What must you know to access the key learning goals of that year? And that means trade-offs. It means agreeing not to teach everything, not to try to teach the laundry list of everything you thought was in the grade level, but pick what's most essential and say to yourself, my children are going to have the opportunity to learn those things, even though I know there's a lot of stuff they didn't master right in the years before. I'm only going to teach them a needs to know basis, right? What they absolutely need. Again, that's another way of putting it. Don't worry about the slide, but basically past concepts and skills are addressed, but only in the context of current learning. So the easiest way to think about this is remediation looks backwards, right? Oh my goodness, we got to fill in all of these huge holes in knowledge and skills. Acceleration looks forward. What must I know for tomorrow's lesson, for next week's lesson? This is some work about what makes the most difference. 2 things stand out here. We've always known that stronger instruction is good. That's common sense, right? Stronger teachers, teachers with better pedagogical skills, they make a difference. Of course they do. But the 2 bookends here, the 7.3 and the 7.9 months, really make an incredibly compelling pairing. What this means is that if I expect my kids to be able to do grade level work, and I give them grade level assignments, those 2 things together are an incredible accelerator, right? They make the world of difference. If I don't think my kids can do acceleration, it's not going to happen, right? At nearly as effective a rate. So it's a mindset and a set of tools is the best way to put it. It's a mindset that I can get them there, get them to get access to the grade level material, and it's the tools to get them there. And we'll talk about those tools in a second. The simple test is, will this material, this approach help my students get to grade level material? And that's not to be done instead of social and emotional needs. There's a false dichotomy out there that somehow, because of COVID and real trauma in the case of some children and some trauma in the case of many children, that somehow asking them to do rigorous academic work is sort of cruel or unfair. Actually, what's most unfair is to undermine their life prospects by not teaching them rigorous material. That is truly unfair. And the other thing that's unfair is being patronizing of children. They know when they're being undertaught. Their self-esteem actually goes up in the meaningful sense when they feel they are doing well in school. And no amount of telling them that it's all fine, that they're not working because of what happened to them under COVID, they don't buy it. We know that. That is not real self-esteem. That is not real self-confidence. That is just really pushing them back down when they're already in trouble. I'm going to skip that slide. So the first thing for all of us is, how do we do this, right? What are our tools? The first tool is a really good curriculum. Can't pretend otherwise. Really good, we call them HQIM, high quality instructional materials. Hopefully your districts, your schools are either engaged with these materials already or are planning to use these materials. Why? Why is it so important? A, they are written to be rigorous. They stretch our children. And if we have one national challenge in the United States, It is that we massively underteach our children, and we greatly, massively underteach our least privileged children, right? We meet them where they are and then we stay there. So high quality materials are rigorous, but they also, and this is really important, many of them now have the best diagnostics built into them. So a math program we think of as probably the best in the United States right now, called CRRSA, has really good diagnostics, which then say to the teacher, in order to teach the next concept, based on the results of this diagnostic, you're going to have to pre-teach, right, the following 2 or 3 things. That's acceleration, right? Need to know to get the kid ready for tomorrow or next week's lesson. Good curriculum do this, also in ELA, right? We're increasingly seeing sophisticated diagnostics. If you use diagnostics that aren't curriculum related, like MAP or iReady, which are in many of our schools, millions of children in America use these. The problem is translating those results into your materials. And often that translation doesn't happen. And the result is teachers grab at Pinterest, Google, teachers pay teachers, and that material is weak. It's not good, and it doesn't help with acceleration. So the tighter the tie between the diagnostic and the good curriculum materials, the easier acceleration is going to be. That's crucial. Okay, third point. You can't expect a veteran teacher, 12-year veteran, that's a national average, to change the way they do things based on 10 minutes of telling them to. On average, when we give teachers completely new curriculum, like these high quality curriculum, and this is national data, we give them a day and a breakfast. Now think about that. Think about that. A day consists probably of a breakfast, getting to know you, lunch break, right? Breakout. They probably get 4 hours of real instruction on changing an entire lifetime of teaching. Should we be surprised when it doesn't happen? So message to all of you, we need to create the spaces physically, temporally, that is given the time and the space for teachers to get thorough PD so that they know how to use high quality materials to accelerate student learning. If they don't, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Do not expect that for a few hours of talk to teachers it wouldn't be true for any of us, right, who've been in habits for a decade, that we were suddenly going to change our professional way of being because somebody spoke to us for a few hours. We wouldn't even know how. So real professional development is crucial. Okay, I said before there are some trade-offs, and this is really important. We cannot accelerate to learn everything, right? It just can't happen. During COVID-19, a number of organizations put out more restricted learning targets at grade level. And that second part of the sentence is really important, at grade level. This is one of them from Student Assessment Partners. And it said basically, yes, there are 32 things that'd be great to learn in 7th grade. Here are the 9 that are really important, right? Let's accelerate to those 9. And let's, better they learn those 9 than none of the 32, right? And just go back 2 years and try to gap fill. So being willing to do the less is more, to quote David from earlier, right? Do less better in his exact phrase, that is crucial. We can't, there's no free lunch here. We can't accelerate to everywhere. It isn't going to work. And again, on the diagnostics, right? Make sure that the diagnostics are relevant, right? This again is from an organization called Achieve the Core, which is part of Student Achievement Partners. The point I'm trying to make here is you take your last year's state tests, or in this case, 2 years ago, it's not a useful tool, right? It's not a useful tool of telling you exactly what you need to focus on with your children in their preschool tutoring, in their response to intervention, in their differentiated classrooms for Monday morning's math class. That's what a diagnostic, when it does its job, is really supposed to tell you. Okay, I want to focus, just in the interest of time, on a real world. This is a real world instance. Here is Miss Smith. She's got 22 students in 5th grade. She uses a diagnostic. She wants to teach adding unlike fractions. That is the very specific task for that class. She does a diagnostic and she sees that the kids are just they're 2 years behind. They're not just not quite ready for adding unlike fractions. They don't even understand a fraction, right? She then has the class work on fully planned, differentiated, independent skills that are tailored, right, to that concept. In this instance, and I disagreed with this, this is a real world example, the teacher began by actually teaching the concept, right, that is adding unlike fractions, and then differentiated the class. I think more logically, you would differentiate the class first to do the crucial pre-teaching based on the diagnostic, and then teach the concept, right, to the whole class. She did it the other way around. I didn't want to be dishonest and change the example. Then, having done that, she, instead of doing all of grade 3 work, which is what remediation would have been, she's only focused in that differentiated instruction on the must-know skills to add unlike fractions, right? That's all that she cared about. Then she used response to intervention, extra hours, and we can add, because of stimulus funds, possibly, tutoring, right, at different parts of the day that will work best if the tutor really knows what happened in Miss Smith's class. If the tutor doesn't know what happened in the class, if the tutor doesn't see the work from that class, if the tutor doesn't know not only what Miss Smith is teaching that day, but tomorrow and the day after, the effective tutoring will be diluted. And this goes to a much bigger sort of point I want to make, which I hope will be interesting to all of you, which is that we have to think about the space of the school now in a somewhat different way. It's not about 50-minute lessons in isolation from one another. It is about creating the time and space for the whole human resources available to a school system to accelerate the children for that 25 minutes of adding unlike fractions. What I mean by that is, was there a summer experience that was integrated with the forthcoming curriculum units, not sitting by itself and siloed? Was it planned to prepare teachers and students for the beginning of the fall year? Is there planning so that particular teachers who are strong in social and emotional support can be reaching out to parents and students, whereas teachers who are really good at leading content instruction may take 2 classes right together and then perhaps have a para or a student teacher or another adult do the differentiation work, right, in some part of that block timing. In other words, the key here is not the 50-minute sacred, 50 minutes. It is, how do you design the school spaces and time usages and HR usages so that the child gets an integrated support system to be able to study at grade level as much as possible? And that often takes more than one adult. The more the adults are really normed on what's happening at the core, namely in that 50 minutes, the more effective that 50 minutes can be, right? And that takes a lot of work. And it takes courage, right? Because it really does mean breaking down some of the old ways of doing things. And we can come back to that. Tutoring, I've already mentioned. A lot of districts are spending money on tutoring. Again, we have to think hard about this. It's much better to be done during the school day. Now you'll say to me, but wait a minute, what happens to the music lesson? Again, I wish I didn't have to say this, especially as a former person who ran education for the Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts. I love arts education. I think it's a tragedy that we've put it as a third-class citizen in the subject matter lists, but something has to give. If a child is way behind in adding unlike fractions, she may have to be pulled out of a class that's less vital, given our system, in order to be tutored on exactly that skill, knowing that it's coming tomorrow morning and she can't yet manage it. Can she be tutored instead early in the morning? Yes, but she's probably going to be half asleep. Can she be tutored after the school day? Yes, better than 7 in the morning. But there are problems perhaps with transportation. There are problems with, right? I mean, these are real world issues that districts are going to have to grapple with. What I'm here to do is to share the research, which says the more integrated the tutoring is, the more powerful it will be. One-on-one, one-on-two tutoring is extremely expensive. You might need to allow for 1-on-5, 1-on-6, 1-on-7. That has space implications. That has implications for spaces you hold open at different hours of the day, maybe on the weekends, right? We can't make the good the enemy of the perfect and the perfect the enemy of the good. 1-on-6 tutoring has researched good effects. Are they quite as strong as 1-on-1, 1-on-2? No, but they're a heck of a lot better than almost anything else. And so again, don't spend your precious dollars on using certified teachers. That's not their job. They shouldn't be doing tutoring. Your community college students looking for extra income, they can do tutoring, right? If they're properly trained. When are you going to train them? What space are you going to train them in? Are you going to do it remotely? Better 1-on-1 if you can, but maybe that's possible, maybe it isn't. Okay, so let me give you back the screen. I always have trouble doing this, but I'm sure I can figure this out. There we go, stop share. Okay, that was a race. I know that was like 300 miles an hour. But I think that I'm much more interested in questions and discussion and probing where issues are interesting to you than in listening to myself give a lecture. So please now let me know where I can dig in and provide more information and detail.
So, David, I have a couple questions, and I'm sure others will follow suit. Do you have examples of districts that have actually integrated this work with the tutoring and that are planning for the summer to take this and raise it?
Yeah. We know of districts that are. So Baltimore, where I'm speaking to you from, Sonia is planning this right now with her team. This is all forward planning. But it is happening across the country. The Annenberg Center at Brown University is leading the national sort of charge on tutoring and is developing resources that I should soon be on their website about that. I think that, I can give you some names. The article that I put in my email to you, which you're going to, I think, post, which is a co-authored piece I did for Fordham on acceleration, is with a principal who did this in practice. The real world example I gave you on one of the slides came from her school. And she's willing to answer questions at a very granular level. She's actually now in charge of a number of schools. But at that point, she was a principal when she put this in. So the honest answer to your question is that it's all in the planning, right? Because the order is really summer first, tutoring second, right? Fall third. But what I am saying to Baltimore and what we are saying, Dan Weisberg, who's at TNTP, and I have worked together on this, what we are saying is the more people who can be brought together at the front end of that planning and definitely involved in the summer, the better. So don't think of the summer as just your regular summer academy where folks who've done it all before are asked to do it again. You need highly trained, preferably teachers in the summer who are going to teach the curriculum they know they're going to teach, not making it up as they go along. you want the tutors there at the summer experience, right? So that they can see what is going to be taught, what the summer experience looks like. You need ideally simple but real diagnostics at the front of the summer experience so that you don't waste everyone's time and teach children what they already know or what they can't possibly access. What I'm saying is the planning for this begins now, right? It begins with the design of your summer academics if you're going to do them. If you are not going to do them, then it begins with the planning for the very first unit, right? Are the tutors ready for it? Have they studied the curriculum? And so forth and so on. So I think the answer really is you have to keep in mind the integration of everything that we want to do and plan backwards from there. And yes, you can certainly have a copy of the PowerPoint. Someone's asking, no, not a problem.
So following that, we've heard you raised at the very beginning, actually, the trauma that our children have gone through, and the expectation. We need to have our children have high expectations, and we have to have high expectations for them as well. Some people will say we should not talk about learning loss or the loss of opportunity, because children had the opportunities to learn all sorts of different things this year with the remote learning taking place. Where's that balance, though, between recognizing, sure, we did have opportunities to learn different types of activities, so to speak, or creative ways to present things, but there was learning loss. And so how do we balance it to say, no, you didn't have a complete lost year, but recognizing we did have it?
Well, first of all, I would never use learning loss vocabulary in front of students. It's not helpful. It doesn't convey any helpful information. At the same time, either you can read or you can't, right? Either you can add unlike fractions or you can't. And if you can't, you can't. And it really doesn't matter whether that's because you never learned it before COVID. You were already 2 years behind, right? Or because you would have learned it but for COVID. We're really agnostic on that. I don't want people to waste a lot of energy looking backwards. We are where we are. Social and emotionally, we know, and this is crucial research from my colleague Bob Balfance at Hopkins, the single most important thing, there are two. One, that self-esteem feels good because it is good. It's based on real achievement, right? We can't fake it with children. They know the difference. Number two, that there's a caring adult who they can talk to, right? And that person can be a volunteer from City Year, it can be the counselor, it can be a particular teacher, but somebody in that school has to know who they are and differentiates them from everyone else. Somebody they trust, that makes a world of difference. And the biggest difference it makes is for the most underprivileged children, right? Because often their parents are doing 2 or 3 jobs, or they have a caretaker, or they have a giver who is a grandparent, right? They do not have necessarily that guidance and support consistently at home. Some do, of course, some don't. But an adult that is part of this is crucial. And often in good schools, that adult may be the homeroom teacher, but maybe somebody quite different, maybe the sports coach. That's what I meant about distributing HR, right? You may have a bus driver who is the most popular person in the school. I've known this, right? If that's true, right, can you create a space? Maybe it's online. Give that bus driver some extra income to be attached to 10 of your most troubled children, just to talk to them. Right? Can you think your way out of a box? Right? It may be a custodian. It may be the phys ed teacher. It doesn't matter, right? As long as it's an adult. So social and emotional means somebody hears me. Somebody hears me.
Right.
And self-esteem means I did it. I really did it. Right? I managed it.
You know, I can't help but the last week we spoke with a veteran teacher from Arlington, Texas, and she used the exact phrase you did. We need to create space and time for teacher-teacher, student-teacher, and student-student relationships.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that we have to provide space through extended periods of time. And she was even going as nitnoid as saying, block scheduling is
Right.
great because you can have more time for depth as opposed to 47.5 minutes of the train ride going through, right?
Exactly.
And then coupling that with, we heard Kathleen Minkus, the director of the National Association of School Psychologists, talking about the same thing you're talking about, the caring adult. It's that, what we need to focus on. Everybody really needs to reattach and have that safe space, safe adults, the relationship, the relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's what our teacher said last week. And, it struck me in the beginning, David, that you broke down this false dichotomy, and I love that, between high expectations and mental health. These are not in opposition, unless, to go back to something you said earlier, it's like the reasonable expectations. High reasonable expectations,
right,
good. High unreasonable expectations are crazy. We can't do all that stuff.
That's right. But I think unrealistic tends to come from the panic that I have 123 learning outcomes for grade 7. Right?
Yep.
How on earth, right? If I
Right.
have 10, or let me take an ELA example, since so often it's only math. Great Minds produces a curriculum called Wit and Wisdom, which is, one of the high regarded curriculum. I mean, I could talk about CKLA, I could talk about EL, same thing. But they're roughly 6 units in an average middle school Great Minds, right, Wit and Wisdom curriculum. We say to certain schools, teach 3 of them, right? If you teach 3 great texts with their secondary materials in depth, and children who are a year behind, 2 years behind, feel they can manage, right, that they've understood what's going on, that is worth so much more than being turned off the entire year because there's just no way, right? We've got to give up on the mile wide. Otherwise, everyone's going to just be further behind. It can't be done.
And I said I'm going to mute. I promise, Susan. I just can't help myself. The facility implications of this, you were saying. Can you speak more? I mean, I just had a conversation yesterday with some superintendents in Virginia who are with an architectural firm that I work with there, and they were saying, hey, we've got capital, we've got new school construction projects in design right now.
Right.
We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we also don't want to ignore the changes underfoot.
Right.
What do you think from that perspective of, hey, we need to focus on mastery and deep learning and relationships? What are the facility implications for that in your mind?
So first of all, differentiated spaces to the extent that can be possible. What I mean by that, in new classrooms, part of the kids are in front of screens, really drilling down on a very specific skill that is best done with a Khan Academy video, right? Other parts of that class are in a tutoring pullout. A third part of that classroom of the students are with the teacher, right, doing grade level material. So is there flexibility so that the school can be used for the supportive differentiation? Or are you locked into 25 kids must be in this space at this time and nowhere else, right? That is a huge drain on imaginative use of HR and of technology, right? So planning for differentiation in the use of space in advance will be crucial. To what extent can you allow for dynamic reorganizations of the physical space of the student body, right? Depending on where they happen to be in their learning trajectory and therefore what kind of intervention they need. I mean, that to me is everything. If you're going to do a case of a master teacher, right, doing a presentation to 65 kids or 60 kids? Do you have a space for that? If you don't, can it be done online, right? And what does that mean? What does it mean to, to put something online the night before? Now that we've been doing this for a year, let's use the fact that we've greatly increased online access in many districts to 100%, right? Online might be tutoring. Tutoring may not be done in the physical location. If it's during the day, if there's a tutor who wants to tutor on a skill across several district schools, that ought to be possible, right? Maybe that's the best way to do it. That's why this isn't only a school issue, but it's a district issue. The district has to think about use of human resources in powerfully new ways, where possible, right? If it's only at the school level, still, you have to think about mixed modalities. What are my capacities to pull children into online experiences when necessary versus face-to-face versus 1-on-6 versus, right, small groups versus large groups. So flexibility to enable the best principals and their lead teachers to imagine what real differentiation looks like. Boy, that's a tough one. I do not want to come over as being Pollyanna-ish. We have done this badly for so long. I walk into these classrooms in Baltimore. I'm sure it's not, much better in other places. I hope it is somewhat better. But the whole school has been designed like, there's the corridor, there are the classrooms, they're all the same size, right? There is no flexibility. Where are you going to put kids for different groupings and so forth and so on? So thinking now, but that means that the physical design and the pedagogical thing can't be siloed conversations. And that's tough, right? We
Preaching our language, David.
Yeah, well, none of us like crossing boundaries. We don't talk like them, right? Well, maybe we better learn.
Well, yeah, and the diverse, sort of the mantra in our world, and this has been a diverse array of spaces arranged so they work together as a whole to serve differentiated needs at differentiated times. How that's accomplished, there's a myriad of different ways.
That's right.
Super brass tacks way from a facility planning to be really, engineering about it is minimize interior load-bearing walls. When you do that, you can rearrange so many things on the inside with,
But I mean, you have experts on this call. Let me just give you one reality tale. Johns Hopkins University runs a public school called Henderson Hopkins. They spent a bundle on the architecture. It's gorgeous. It's got tessellating spaces and undulating this and whatever. The first thing the teachers did when they arrived was put up cardboard partitions so that they could actually be heard by their children as opposed to being drowned out, right? The next thing Hopkins had to do, and I'm not making this up, they spent over $1 million putting walls back up, right? So this is not simple at all, but it really only makes sense, and this is my serious point, if it has a concrete relationship, forgive the pun, with the pedagogical approaches that the principal is willing to support, right? Otherwise, it's fantasy, right? I mean, otherwise we go back to computers sitting in the corner not being used. And that really, yes, I like that visual. I can't even pronounce that word because I'm dyslexic, but agency with acoustic separation. I think that really we have to think about the child's point of view. What do I need? I'm going to need some exposure to that grade level material with all of my peers, ideally, right? That might be in a group of 60, right? I'm going to need that 1-on-5 tutoring. That might be online. I'm going to need that opportunity to socialize around some learning, right? That might be in small groups with differentiated instruction. What are you going to make possible for me? What's the physical plan going to make possible for me? And what's the pedagogical plan going to make possible for me? And are the two talking to each other? That's That's hard work on the part of adults on behalf of children.
And following on that, we're getting quite a bit of money
Right.
that's coming to us.
Right.
And we are having a window of time that
Right.
we are able to spend those dollars. And we're going to be checking off everything that we do because the feds are going to say,
Yep.
is this in compliance with what the legislation looks like?
Yep.
So, or has put the parameters the legislation has put on us. So how do we take this short period of time and
Yep.
money that's
good.
coming to us and being able to inject it effectively and efficiently into programs that are going to be lasting, David?
Yep.
Because we only have this for,
Oh yeah,
you know, 36 months, right? And then it's gone. And we need it to be long lasting, and we don't have the money to hire all of the tutors in the world for the next 25 years or all of the, you know, so we have to be judicious.
So 2 or 3 things. One, we have to backward map from the problem that is the worst problem, right? And try to do it that way, like backward mapping anything.
Right, right.
What's the biggest problem? The biggest problem is teachers making up their own curriculum, 80% of which is below grade level, convinced that their children can never reach grade level. That is the #1 problem of underprivileged children in our schools in the United States. To change that mindset, we have to create the space, the time, and the money to bring them in during the summer before the academic year starts, to reset that set of expectations. That means really drilling down on the fact that that has damaged children, drilling down on the fact that what we can do for teachers is to give them the best possible tools, not leave it to them. Authentic teach. Look, my analogy is Meryl Streep. She doesn't say, I'm not going to act in this movie because I didn't write the script. She says, give me the best possible script, and then I'll use my acting skills to make it wonderful. Teachers are not curriculum writers. They're teachers. We owe them the best possible tools, the best possible PD to support their acquaintance and knowledge of those tools, then let them use their skills to differentiate, to blend them, to sometimes change them a little bit, but not start from scratch, which is where 1.5 million teachers are today. So that means planning time, curriculum time, PD time with teachers. It means talking to them about differentiation. What do they do when they get that diagnostic? Not theoretically, but actually going through a real diagnostic and saying, how does this relate to what you're going to teach next week? With adding unlike fractions, right? If you find out that the diagnostic tells you your kids are 2 years behind in whole numbers, what are you going to do? Right? It is going through those exercises and then saying to them, and by the way, we're not only going to give you the best materials, we're not only going to walk you through lines between diagnostic and curriculum use, we're going to give you tutoring support. And that tutor is going to see the work from your students. And you're going to sit down with the tutor, on the Friday before the next week and share the lesson plans with that tutor. So she or he knows what's coming. And you're going to talk about the kind of skills, right, that are good. All of this has to be, it's a mind shift. And if you wait until the semester begins and just throw money at hiring 500 tutors, and they have nothing to do with what's in the classroom because the teacher keeps changing what she's teaching and she's going to teach the under stuff anyway, that is the stuff that's not at grade level, it's too late. The money's going to be wasted. So shifting the mindset, introducing the tools, creating the knowledge about the upcoming support structures and how the communication is going to work, that's the work of the summer. That's where the money should be spent, right? Yes, of course, it takes money to bring the tutors in during the real school year.
Right.
But I'd rather spend 30% of the money getting ready and then doing 1-on-4 tutoring than do nothing and then just say, well, I've got, I'm spending my 150 million on 1-on-1 tutoring. Isn't that fantastic? I don't know. Is it? Right? Does the tutor know what's happening in the classroom? Does the tutor know the curriculum? Is the teacher sticking to the curriculum, or is the tutor guessing what the curriculum is going to be tomorrow morning? Because the teacher doesn't know. You see the difference? I mean, the one is really planning for integration, both in terms of mindset and tools, which means knowing what your plan is. The other is just throwing resources at stuff and hoping something sticks.
Yeah, I mean, high quality instructional material focused on acceleration and core content and organizing all the adults around it. And what you're describing, David, is many adults around individual children looking at the same data.
Exactly.
In a sequence that is arranged long into the future.
Yes.
That we can absolutely predict and track towards, as opposed.
Absolutely. Let's think about the medical analogy, right?
Yeah.
When the critically ill patient arrives at the ER room, right, it's not a set of guesswork as to the process that's then going to occur. Right, people know their roles in relationship to the diagnostic of that patient. First, there's a diagnostic, right? Then, depending on the diagnostic, there are a set of intervention tools, right? X-rays, operations, whatever it may be, and individuals who know in advance that if that thing is what's called for, they are ready and they have the tools ready to intervene, right? All under the auspices of a hospital that is organized around making that differentiation not just possible, but necessary.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Analogous, I'm sorry, just analogously to that, the image is fantastic, I think, because you also said the doctor isn't doing everything.
That's right.
You have a whole variety of staff, from the business side to nurses to techs to counselors to chaplains, who are all coming in their roles at their sequence in an organized fashion.
Right. And they expect that, right? Yeah. Some will be super busy some of the time, right? And other times they'll have more off time that they can use to plan for the busy times, right? Or do whatever paperwork they sadly still have to do. But it would be crazy to say that a hospital is going to work out in real time, right, how it's going to react to a given diagnosis of a patient. Right? It can't make it up as it goes along. And it can't say, well, we can't do the X-ray. Maybe we could do this instead because we don't have anyone to do an X-ray. Or we don't have a room in which to isolate this patient with COVID, right? So we're just going to bung that patient in with all the other non-COVID patients. That's how we do schooling, right? We diagnose and then we hope for the best. The teacher does her best to do everything, to differentiate, to not differentiate, to do a response to intervention, to, and then hope that something sticks. Right. I mean, don't get me started on teacher preparation for all of this. The medical profession changed this in about 1908, partly in response to a huge report that was then published that said we kill more patients than we save in American hospitals because they make it up as they go along. Right. Exactly this point. And then we began to get real clinical preparation and differentiated tracks, right, of professional support to learn different skills for different results of diagnosis of patients. In teaching, we still we don't do this, right? I mean, in Korea, you have curriculum experts, you have data experts, you have mentor experts, you have administrative experts, and they are trained from early periods in the school to be really good at that stuff and to work across their expertise. It's I mean, boy, we have taken the point of view of, somehow the door closes and the teacher works miracles, or she doesn't.
Hope is not a strategy.
Right.
It's not a
Right.
strategy.
No.
Yeah. Somebody asked the question, and to get back to it, and I want to tie this into the diagnostics.
Right.
We are familiar with the slogan of reading by 9. Is there a similar, easy to understand benchmark for math? And I want to tie that to another question, comment that Kathleen said from the Association of School Psychologists, which was her word of caution about welcoming all the students back. Man, it's been one heck of a year. Let's take a battery of tests, right?
Yeah.
And what I hear you saying is targeted assessments, targeted interventions, targeted.
And much better that they be part of your curriculum. You'll barely notice it. They'll look like quizzes, and they are quizzes often, right, inside the curriculum. They're not, oh my God, we're all going to march into a room for 50 minutes and take a test and be pulled out of our classroom and it's high stakes. No, it's a quiz, right?
Yeah.
And on math, it's two things. It's whole numbers and fractions, right? If you haven't grasped whole numbers, and many never do, believe it or not, you've had it. At 3rd grade, it's over. And fractions are crucial for everything, algebra notwithstanding. 3rd grade math scores are the most predictive of everything else in math life. There is nothing more predictive. So, that is a cautionary tale. The problem with 3rd grade is it's the first time we assess as states, and that's a mess. We should be assessing in 1st and 2nd.
Yeah.
By the time we get to the end of 3rd grade, we now, funnily enough, we discover we've got huge problems. It's 3 years too late.
Because it's probably nothing magical about the age 9 when it's probably just an accident of when we test, right?
It's when we enter high school, right? So for structural reasons, it matters. But we encourage obviously the use of things like CRRSA, the Kindergarten Education Readiness Assessment, to get data into the hands of kindergarten, and we urge the testing and dibbles and so forth and so on. But I think the key here is it doesn't have to be scary. And the more a map or an iReady, unfortunately, the kids know it's not part of their curriculum, right? They know. Whereas something from Zern, they do it every day, right? It's just it's a math exercise, and you can distribute it across a week.
Don't even know.
So, calm it down, make it reasonable. But I'd be happy to follow up with any of your guests. I will send you the PowerPoint for what it's worth. But by all means, if there are questions that come in later, happy to engage with them. And I would just want to say that, breaking down the barriers of communication between physical plant, technology, and pedagogy, I know it's not easy. But if it doesn't happen, somebody's going to say to somebody in 3 months, 4 months, we can't do that.
Right.
We just can't do it. To which the answer is, you probably can't. But if you'd thought about it 4 months ago or 6 months ago, maybe you could.
The plan. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Steiner, for joining us this afternoon.
I'm sorry.
You always leave us this way.
I'm sorry.
But no, I have to say, I mean, this, in all honesty, is some of the favorite part of the day is when we have this cut to the heart of it kind of conversation on these meetings with folks who know their craft, and it cuts to it's the simple, not easy. Simple. But not easy to bring people together and plan ahead. It's the basics. Let's master it and not just sort of cover and forget.
Right. What money can buy is time. And the availability of the right expertise, right? So just figuring out, what are your diagnostics? Do they give you the information that they need to? If they don't, let's find better ones, right? Who do we call? That all takes time.
Yeah. And the earlier, the better, you know,
I would start yesterday.
and in terms of the interventions as well, the focus, when you showed that initial slide of the learning difference slide between students in different ethnicity, different economic, you know, I go back to, I can't remember who was the author of the study in 2011 that looked at social mobility in the Western world, and there was only two predictors. And that was the level of education of your parent and the quality of your pre-K education. It was the Pew Center, the Pew.
Oh, that group.
Yeah, that little group.
Yeah.
And the idea just that it's the kids learn and they lose learning at the same rate. Kids learn and lose at the same rates. They just start at different points on the track. We're not starting everybody at the same starting line.
But here's a thought to leave here's what you can do better at. America is almost unique in the advanced industrialized world that every year you spend in a public school in America, on average, he quickly adds, you learn less than you did the year before, every single year. So the same effect size of an intervention in high school is worth massively more than an intervention in kindergarten. Because in high school, we can't measure the learning between 11th and 12th grade. It's not statistically significant. Wow. So any intervention with a positive sign after it is a miracle. Between K and 1, children learn a huge bunch of stuff. If we could change that, that would change the world for these children. Every year they spend in an American classroom, they learn less than they did before. Let's change that.
I can't think of a better way to end.
Okay.
Besides saying see you all next week.
Thank you so much for your patience.
Wow. No, this was, please everybody, you know, thank David on your way out. That was fantastic. And next week, folks, when we come back, you know, this is wrapping up our planned speaker series for the winter spring. And what a note to end on. And what we're going to do next week is to go back to have a roundtable on, okay, you know, after everything that we've heard, you know, what are our plans right now in terms of your summer planning, your summer interventions, your fall, like what are you thinking in terms of these extraordinary funds for these extraordinary times? And to dialogue a bit amongst ourselves on that without a planned speaker, while we put together, some recommendations next week for how the guidance document to sum all this year up will come, and we'll talk to you more about it then and get your feedback. But again, fantastic. Thank you all for your questions, your time. David.
Thank you both. Thank you all for your time and for the work you do every day. Really appreciate it. I'm here if there are questions I can be helpful with.
Thank you, Dr. Steiner. And we will be posting this as always, so we can share with friends. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.